Welcome to today's webinar, Enhancing Data Security in Higher Education Institutions. What types of attacks are you guys seeing, or what is it that keeps you awake at night in terms of cyber?
So we see a myriad of attacks, and actually in conjunction with SmartTech, when we go through our calls, our weekly calls, you guys are able to highlight to us exactly issues that we're seeing through our QRadar, our SIEM solution, etc. But I suppose some of the ones that come up even outside of that. So invoice fraud is one that we actually see on a semi-regular basis. So we see people trying to impersonate other people in DCU or pretend to be a vendor who wants their bank details changed, etc. So we see that fairly regularly, and I mean, we try to protect against that with our awareness training program, and with strong policies in the finance office about who can make changes and under what circumstances, etc. But that's definitely one we see regularly. We also see, I suppose, some automated attacks. So we would have had one of our language school recently. Actually, we had an automated attack on their WordPress site. Now, it was managed and hosted by an external company, but it was an old plugin, and a combination of that with some file system permission errors resulted in the site being taken over and users being redirected to an external site. So we see those kind of automated attacks happening all the time. We see credential harvesting. So we were running a project there recently where we're trying to get rid of all of our alumni accounts, which we're not the first and we probably won't be the last, but we were trying to get rid of all of the old alumni accounts. So we're just getting to the end of that project now, actually. But in the middle of that project, there was a phishing exercise done by some malicious actors, and they emailed a whole list of our alumni, offering them an extension on their account, etc. Very enticing. We had told them their account was going, and these guys were offering them an extension on their account. And the interesting one about that attack was they were redirecting those alumni to a domain, maildcu.com, I think it was called. But that domain was registered 12 months before it was used. So it's almost like it was registered well in advance, sitting there waiting for an opportunity. And again, thankfully, that one we noticed relatively quickly. We were able to pull emails back out of accounts, etc., and we were able to deal with it relatively quickly. But that was an interesting one. And then I suppose the other thing just to mention, I suppose, the emergency hotline that we have set up with SmartTech now, that works quite well. So we had an attack recently where a staff member browsed some website, they got a pop-up on their screen which looked like a system message, and they suspected it was ransomware, and thankfully they picked up the phone and they rang the 24/7 emergency hotline that we have in place, and we were able to investigate that straight away. But we're seeing a myriad of all types of attacks happening. Yeah.
What challenges do educational institutions face in managing secure, sensitive data while maintaining that environment where people can learn?
I believe universities are such targets because they really mirror society. I mean, if you're looking at what organization has got banking, retail, it has research, it has teaching, it has a bit of engineering, it has a finance department, it's got HR. So universities really look like a government, from the perspective of systems and different functional areas and different types of data. So they're very attractive targets. Let's say if somebody is practicing for, let's say, a state attack, a university is a good training ground for that. The other thing, and you quite rightly pointed out, we've got a dual mandate. We have an obligation, which is our predominant obligation, to safeguard the data entrusted to us by our research community, our partners, but actually our students in the main and our staff, and making sure that data stays safe. We would have tried to, and we've gone through loads of stages of expansion. We've tried to move away from storage on disks. We've got rid of removable disk backups. We've actually moved away from network storage and probably moved towards cloud storage. So the scale and complexity and the diversity of the data is immense.
How do you deal with the pressure that those regulations put on you from an IT perspective, right, and a cyber perspective?
We welcome legislation. It's hard for legislation to keep up with something moving this fast, and legislation brings clarity. So legislation does, once something is a legislative obligation, really we're all rowing at this together. And the legislation is trying to keep up. I mean, GDPR dealt with the regulation probably for personal data. I think we're going to see more on that, around the accountabilities for managing other citizens' data. I think the obligations there are going to grow, and I kind of welcome that clarity. We won't welcome it the day that we have to put all the systems in place, but I think it does bring clarity, and it does help everybody to work together. What we try to do to a large extent, and you touched on this actually earlier, I mean, we can put in the best systems, and we can spend a lot of money on putting in all of the systems that we have, and we have put a lot of systems in. But people remain the weakest link in that, and if somebody, I suppose, has poor data hygiene, we call it, and handles data incorrectly, they can kind of work around the systems. They can inadvertently pull together a spreadsheet with too much sensitive data. They can inadvertently email that to 200 students, so these things can still happen. So I think, so you need a twin track approach. One track is the investment and the precautions we take in to put in controls, tooling, SOC SIEM, Justin has intimated there, to all of the solutions we need to put in. The other part we really need to work on to get everybody working together is to grow awareness, to show people how to keep themselves safe.
And in many cases, it feels like there's a disparity between the actual implementation of what's needed from a regulatory perspective versus the actual security controls. So I'm interested in your perspective on that.
Data protection unit in DCU now is quite well developed, and we have a very good relationship with them. They have a great model set up actually, where they've got a data champion model. So basically all the areas around the university, they have a nominee from each area who attends regular meetings chaired by the data protection office, in an effort, I suppose, to raise awareness, and then for those data champions to be the expert in their area. They know the data in their area, they know the workflows, they know the processes, and they know the risks, I suppose. So those data champions then feed back into the data protection office. And that's a model I think that works well in sharing the responsibility, because the other thing about this whole piece is it is about shared responsibility right across the organization. The IT department can't be fully responsible, the data protection office can't be fully responsible. It is shared responsibility right across the organization. We have an incident response plan in place, so if there is an incident, it's categorized. Once it goes above a certain level, senior management are involved and informed. There is an incident response team that will be gathered together. On that team, you have senior management, you have HR, you have communications, you have data protection, you have IT. So I suppose there is a shared responsibility mindset in how we're going to deal with incidents and how we'll handle things.
Can you give us an example of a successful collaboration between the educational IT function that you now run, and bringing the different stakeholders in the university along on a modernization journey or a security journey, or just an example of how you do that?
We found 10 years ago the cloud was really, taking off. More and more of our systems are going to the cloud. So we felt, well, we can't just let them all go to the cloud without some kind of technical assessment. And also we need a legal and a data assessment, and we need a commercial assessment. So we established a process that works very well for us. Any data leaving the organization, there's a relatively efficient process between our legal office, our technical staff, and our procurement staff, just to make sure, have we got the commercial agreements? Do we understand the data agreements? And is it technically sound? Because people were giving away, free IT solutions, but what you were paying for it with your data, because you were giving them your data for free, and you were signing away all your rights to your data. And as someone once said, if you're not paying for the service, then you're the product, not the customer. Yeah. So we established that, and that worked very well because it educated all of us. We got better understanding of the legal and data implications and the commercial implications, and our legal teams and procurement teams got a bit more cognizant of the technical implications, and that worked very well. And we've probably moved 200 to 300 different data services over the last decade, and they've all gone through that check.
I'm interested in your perspective on third-party suppliers and because again, you're so busy and you've so much on your plate. is it ever something that enters your head, okay, I'm going to use a third-party supplier, but, you know, are they liable to get hit with a ransomware attack or data exfiltration? You know, I'm curious about your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, come back to Gerard's point earlier. So we do have controls and policies, etc., in place when anyone in the organization is looking to use one of those external providers or SaaS solution, etc. You know, we do have a policy doc in place which people must read, must follow, and the vendor fills it in. We do a sort of an assessment of the vendor, the solution, the practices, etc. And we try and get ourselves into a position where, you know, we don't sign up to any solutions where we think there is significant risk. But it's impossible. Like even when you assess a vendor and they provide all sorts of SOC 2 reports, etc., and whatever you can review, it still doesn't give you any guarantees that they're not going to suffer that attack and they're not going to be compromised. So we do our best to think about all the risks in that area and assess them and try and protect ourselves. But all you can do is the best you can.
The policy frameworks, the standards, such as NIS2, and the EU are likely to bring NIS2 out as a kind of a policy direction into the future. That's all helpful, because what you want is a baseline, and what you want is to be able to legally hold your provider accountable for the baseline. Yes. And yes, we are in that kind of uncomfortable territory now where the goalposts are still moving, where the legislative obligations and the standards are probably just not written in yet, and, you know, cyber's growing so fast that there is a little bit of a wild west. So what you do have to, as Justin just pointed out, you've got to apply a lot of common sense about, is there sensitive data going out here in this, and is there encryption standards, and how, you know, how deeply, in a way, you know, how much sensitive data are we giving, and are we comfortable with that? And we need to look, how deeply do we have to look? Hopefully it will never be trivial, but hopefully that will become more standardized.
Listen, Gerard, Justin, what are we going to do about ChatGPT, and how are we going to stop these students acing all of their exams?
Universities have never succeeded in turning a blind eye to technology and being afraid of technology. You know, so what organizations need to do, and what our university needs to look at, is actually, maybe we should put ChatGPT into the curriculum and say to your student, go off and use ChatGPT, tell us what that says, and critique it and compare it to what the real answer is. So take it out of the box, because they're entering a workforce and a world where AI is going to be built into the products we use. It's built into Zoom here we're on today, and that would be our philosophy: is to maybe make students aware that we are looking for it, you know, in our assessments, and so on. Design assessments that are not as susceptible to it, and you can do that. You can kind of design certain activities into the assessment that make it so, and maybe just not be afraid of it. Take it out of the box and say, you know, we know that's a tool that's out there now, so yeah, use it if you wish, and let's assess what you think are the gaps or what's wrong. So I think we kind of need to make peace with it.
I suppose the other piece that is interesting is, like, really this is probably just the tip of the iceberg. So the exponential growth of this area and these tools, etc., you know, the dam has already burst and the water is going to come flooding very heavy. So we need to get ready.
Thank you so much for the contribution today. Really enjoyed the discussion, and catch up soon.